Well, the medical fraternity remains divided on categories of e-cigarettes, while government believes vaping and normal cigarettes are equally harmful. Some researchers believe e-cigarettes are a healthier alternative. Vapor Products Association spokesperson Fidel Hadebe joins us now in studio for more on this subject. Mr. Fidel Hadebe, thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about vaping. Now, I'm straight off the bat, I don't smoke, so you're going to have to enlighten me. What is vaping?
Thank you, Richard, for having me in your show this morning. In a nutshell, I mean, vaping is an alternative way of smoking.
Alternative way of
smoking, which is found to be relatively safer compared to traditional smoking products, for instance, such as your cigarettes. So the one or two points I think that we need to make very, very clear right from the beginning. As an association, we remain committed to work with government in ensuring that we reduce the burden of disease that is caused by the use of smoking tobacco products in our society. We agree with government on that score because the evidence is there and is overwhelming. But when it comes to vaping, for instance, there is relatively convincing evidence that seems to suggest that these products are relatively safer, for instance, compared to their traditional counterparts. And that is the point of view that we are pushing in our engagement with government, for instance, especially as we start this process of processing the new bill that the Minister of Health is introducing for public comments.
Okay, well, there's an old saying that goes, you can't coach the game unless you've played it. So do you smoke, do you vape?
Well, I do smoke and vape occasionally, but I don't want this conversation to be more about what Fidel does and does not do in his private time. Yeah.
Right, but it's all about the act of vaping. It's still smoking. What is the difference?
The difference has to do with relative harm, because if you look at your traditional smoking products, for instance, let's take cigarettes, the evidence is there, there's no questioning around the amount of chemicals and the number of chemicals, nicotine, for instance,
correct,
tar, all of those things that go towards the manufacturing of those products. Now, there's no doubt in terms of the impact of those products on public health. But when you look at these new products, for instance, which are not only new, by the way, locally, but globally around the world, they are found to be relatively safe. Some scientists actually even rate them as high as 95% safe in terms of their profile. But the total jury is still out there in terms of the complete profile of the safety of this product. Now, what is the approach that we are taking as the association? We are saying, given our commitment to work with government in terms of regulating this sector, this is a democratic government, this is a legitimate government that we're working with. It has got a duty, it has got a task to regulate. But when it comes to these new products, we are calling for a relatively different approach in terms of saying you cannot start clubbing them with traditional products, which are now known to be very, very harmful to the user.
Okay.
Now, we want the two things to be separated in our view, so that then you don't go for a big stick approach as you work towards achieving your public health outcomes, which we're fully behind of as the association.
Okay, Fidel, let's take a step back. When I consider or think about smoking, I think about individuals who are more or less inundating their blood with toxins. Okay, are you telling me when you vape, nothing harmful is going back into your bloodstream?
Well, there's a group of scientists, for instance, internationally respected scientists, who have been doing a lot of work in this area, and they seem to be pointing in a direction for us to suggest that there is relative safety. We're not talking about complete or 100% safety. We're talking about relative safety. Now, the frequency of usage, for instance, then becomes the question. For instance, some people, for instance, would smoke one cigarette, for instance, per day. Some people, for instance, would smoke the full packet of 20 cigarettes per day. Now, you're dealing with the rate of consumption by an individual on any given period. But what we are saying here is science seems to be pointing us in a direction suggesting that there is an element of safety that needs to be taken into account when you deal with this product. Okay. And therefore, do not go for a big stick approach as you regulate, because the risk that you are running is you're going to be driving this industry underground, you're going to be destroying it before it even grows, and you're going to be actually making it impossible to achieve the very same outcomes that we all want for our country.
Okay, so when one vapes, let's talk about the bystander that's hanging around someone who vapes. Would they be irritated if they're not a smoker? If they're a non-smoker, would they be irritated by the fumes as they vape?
It will depend. I mean, some bystanders would be irritated because some people are naturally hostile towards the mere act of smoking. That's what we're saying. That is why, as the industry body, we are saying certain aspects of this bill we fully support. We don't want a situation where, for instance, somebody could just rock up and vape in a place where they are not supposed to.
Yes.
Yeah, open spaces, for instance, where there are children. There still has to be a certain level or degree of decency and respect of people around you. That is what we are saying as the association. For instance, when it comes to issues of age restriction as well, we're very, very clear in terms of saying we agree with government. I mean, we wouldn't want our products, for instance, to fall onto the hands of youngsters below the regulated age of 18 years, for instance. So overall, we are being very, very reasonable and logical in our approach of engaging with government when it comes to this relatively new product. And this is why we're consistent in our approach in terms of saying separate the two, because the traditional product, there's enough scientific evidence, there's no doubt there. But with this new product, there's still a lot of work that is being done, even in the area of scientific research.
Okay, Fidel, talk to me about the fact that the tobacco industry is starting to shrink. You spoke to me about that earlier, offset, that the sale of tobacco is on the decline. Is that true?
Well, in a number of societies, it is true, including our own, actually, because remember, it could be as a result of the various regulatory mechanisms that have been introduced by government over the number of years. I mean, we were the first ones to move in 1994 with the then Health Minister, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. And then over the years, then there has been that built up. So undoubtedly, that has had an impact on the industry itself. But over and above that, we have seen people, for instance, the agricultural sector, also experiencing some kind of a decline. Now, you look at, for instance, the headache that the tax authorities are having to deal with, the SARS, and the extent to which money has actually been lost by that specific sector, money which should ordinarily have been coming through into the fiscus or into the national revenue. Now, these are all the things that we want to take into account as we deal with this particular bill. Now, we are saying, let us be very, very careful. If you have an infestation of pests in your house,
yes,
you don't go and get some explosives to deal with the pests, which is what we suspect seems to be the case here. Because now the attitude from the part of the regulator seems to be that if it emits smoke, then it's dangerous and you have to be tough on it.
Correct.
We don't want that kind of approach. Go get something relatively better and easy to deal with to address a specific problem of pest infestation. You don't bomb out the whole house if you get that kind of the analogy. There are, of course, a whole lot of other small aspects or elements of the bill, which we also find very, very problematic. Let me just give you one example, Richard. The bill says, as the industry, we will not be allowed, for instance, to provide any form of financial support to any individual, regardless of whether that individual is in need or not, and regardless of whether the intention on our part as the industry is to induce sales. Now, we are saying, as a developing country faced with the kind of challenges that we are faced with, young people going to institutions of higher learning, young people not having resources to pursue education, why do you now want to criminalize a legitimate industry when it wants to intervene and make a difference in the life of a young South African, for instance, who may be a genius, who may be a very, very talented young person, but unfortunately do not have the necessary resources to pursue their own dreams? Issues of regulation when it comes to places of employment. We know, for instance, now that we're having youngsters people as young as 17 who are at our TVET colleges, who are at our universities, for instance. Now, the bill as it stands, what it says, if that young person wants to take up a peace job, for instance,
what job?
A peace job,
okay.
A menial task as a packer in a university cafeteria, that young person will not be allowed to take up the job, especially if part of the job job description will entail handling, just the mere handling of a vaping product that is being criminalized. Now, you see the extent to which the intention is too drastic, to a point where it seems not to take into account the day-to-day realities that South Africans are faced with. Our intention, very, very clear. This is a legitimate government that you are dealing with. It has got every mandate and right to regulate. However, do that in a manner that is open and in a manner that is realistic, in a manner that takes into account the local realities. Okay. That's what we're saying.
But Fidel, in all honesty, the health industry, the health minister are all about the well-being of society. We've taken 10 steps forward in terms of curbing the addiction to nicotine and tobacco. And you can see it on the packages that smoking causes cancer. It seems as we take steps forward, it seems that your organization is, in a sense, giving you an excuse to smoke or to continue that addiction. What do you say about that? I mean, we're trying to stop smoking. We're trying to encourage healthy living and encourage the well-being of citizens. It seems that you're somehow giving an excuse to continue this habit of even smoking.
Well, contrary to it, you have a situation. If you look onto the website of the VPSA, the Vaping Products Association of South Africa, the amount of personal stories that people share with the public, people who tell you that I've been hooked on nicotine for the past 25 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And people are now using these products as a mechanism to, as cessation tools, if you get what I mean.
I understand.
Yeah, stepping off the traditional product because of health concerns and using things that are relative, or that science seems to suggest they are relatively safer. That's what we're saying. So our intentions, contrary to what you seem to suggest, actually are in tandem with what government wants to achieve, because we want to see as many people as possible getting off the evil of nicotine into something relative. This is the first step towards achieving that goal. We're very, very clear. I mean, we're very, very worried about the scourge of cancers in our society. We're very, very worried about the scourge of a whole lot of other non-communicable diseases that are brought about, by the way, not only about smoking, but by the abuse of alcohol in our society. So those are the totality of issues that we want to take into account as a responsible association in this society, in this country.
Mr. Fidel Hadebe, thank you. It's been interesting. Hope to speak to you again real soon.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much.
It's time.